What steamy and scandalous stories are you finally ready to spill? Story 1. Guess who showed up at my door? Yep, Jake. I'd been casually seeing his older brother, James, for a while now. Then last week, on a whim, I let Jake have a chance. I didn't expect much. He's younger, just about to start college, still figuring things out. Maybe I was just chasing the thrill of being wanted by someone new. But here's the twist. Jake knew exactly what he was doing, and he left me breathless. Now somehow, it's me who can't stop thinking about him. I like you from this angle too, he said with a sly grin, his eyes sliding down my body. Last time, he'd taken the lead, and now I could tell, he'd enjoyed every second of it. He stepped inside, his hand finding its way around my waist like he'd always belonged there. I'm not that much older than him, but there's still a little voice in my head like, okay, show some respect for your elders, kid. But Jake? He didn't seem interested in rules. He kissed me without hesitation. I leaned in, letting my arms loop around his neck as our lips met. There was a warmth, a kind of pull, that left me wanting more. His hand started to explore, tugging gently at my clothes as I felt my breath quicken. Before long, we were tangled up, bodies pressed close, the edge of the dining table suddenly becoming very relevant. His fingers ran through my hair as he deepened the kiss, and I could feel the tension building between us. Everything he did was confident, deliberate. He knew how to make me melt. He whispered something against my neck that made my skin tingle, something about how much he'd missed this. I couldn't help but smile. He had a way of taking control without being pushy. There was a rhythm to his touch, a kind of unspoken understanding that made it easy to let go. He paused for a second, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. You trust me? He asked softly. I nodded, my voice barely above a whisper. Yeah. What happened next didn't need many words. He was patient, attentive, and somehow managed to read every signal I gave him. There was no rush, no awkwardness, just this magnetic energy that pulled us closer and closer. At one point, I gasped, overwhelmed by the way he moved, the way he paid attention to every little reaction. I don't know if I can handle you, I admitted, half laughing, half serious. He just smiled and leaned in. You don't have to. I'll handle you. He meant it too. The moments that followed were intense, slow, intentional, and full of quiet surprises. There were goosebumps, soft moans, flushed cheeks, and a lot of tangled sheets. When it was over, I was completely unraveled. And he looked entirely too smug. You're way too good to walk away from, he murmured, brushing his lips over my shoulder. I wanted to ask how he learned to be like this, so confident, so in tune. But I didn't ask. I already knew he wouldn't tell me. And just like that, I realized I was in trouble. Story 2. A few years back, I lived in this creaky old house down in a southeastern state known for attracting free spirits and eccentrics of every flavor. Me? I lived with two of them, John, a guy who only wore linen, and Dina, a white girl with dreadlocks who oozed West Coast chill. Now, Dina wasn't my usual type. She drove a Prius, was staunchly vegan, and spent her weekends rock climbing. Not exactly the kind of chaos I'm generally drawn to. I tend to go for the East Coast types, the ones with sharp eyeliner and sharper tongues, whose tattoos look like they were inked during emotional breakdowns. Dina, by comparison, was serene to the point of being ethereal, which worked out perfectly. I was in that town on a kind of self-imposed exile, trying to hit pause on the whole playboy lifestyle and dive headfirst into books, writing, and the occasional deep meditation. And surprisingly, I was doing pretty well. The local dating pool didn't exactly favor my particular brand of twinkish whimsy, so temptation was minimal. Still, temptation has a way of creeping in sideways. Dina would float through the house in her robe, or do yoga in the living room wearing what could generously be described as shorts. And while I mostly kept my eyes on my laptop, I'd be lying if I said her body didn't occasionally distract me. She had a figure that seemed sculpted more by nature than the gym, and a certain bounce in her step. I've always had a weakness for a good backside. It's my Achilles heel, my guiding star. But for the most part, we kept things platonic. Friendly, curious, occasionally confessional. She'd ask about my old escapades, and I'd indulge her with stories that probably should have come with a rating. She'd joke about her own dry spell, and we'd laugh it off. Then one night, her friend Robin came over. We lit a bonfire in the backyard and cracked open some drinks. Robin, who was tiny and flirtatious in a way that was hard not to notice, seemed to be nursing a bit of a crush. For a moment, I thought something might happen between us, until she crossed the line from tipsy to completely off the rails. She ended up crashing in my bed, and I offered to crash on the floor of Dina's room, since the couch was roughly as comfortable as sleeping on gravel. I laid down on the floor while Dina clicked off her bedside lamp. Then something shifted. Not physically, not audibly, just energetically. The air felt charged, like a string pulled taut between us, humming with quiet tension. I knew she felt it too. It was one of those moments that makes you believe people really can share silent understandings. "It's kind of cold down here," I said eventually. "Then get in the bed," she replied. I slid under the covers. She turned on her side, and before I could even settle in, I felt her press her back against me. Her body moved with a kind of deliberate casualness that left no room for misinterpretation. My breath hitched. My resolve wobbled. "We probably shouldn't hook up," I said, half to her, half to myself. "Yeah," she agreed, still shifting against me in a way that only made things worse. "Definitely not." We both knew we weren't fooling anyone, not even ourselves. It was a polite nod to boundaries we were already stepping over. "But now I'm kind of worked up," I said. "Same," she whispered. "Maybe we can just take care of each other?" That was all it took. What followed wasn't loud or messy. It was quiet, careful, and impossibly intense. A kind of silent language passed between us, one where every movement felt premeditated by instinct. There was no rush, no pressure, just a slow unraveling of restraint. I was stunned by how natural it felt, how much we both seemed to need it, even if neither of us had planned for it to happen. At one point, she paused and whispered, "Your turn." I'd barely kept it together up to that point. The moment she said that, I was done for. There was a kind of generosity in the way she moved, the way she gave herself over to the moment. And when she shifted positions, well, let's just say I was holding on for dear life, trying to savor every second while it lasted. Eventually, we both collapsed back onto the bed, breathing heavy, limbs tangled. No words. No promises. Just silence. We didn't cuddle. We didn't plan to do it again. We just stared at the ceiling for a moment, then drifted off to sleep, both of us spent in that rare, satisfied kind of way that doesn't need explaining. Story 3. Okay, so I'm 19, and this summer I picked up a job at this tiny coffee shop near campus. Super laid-back vibe, mostly just whipping up lattes and pretending not to roll my eyes at customers who don't understand how lines work. But here's the thing, my coworker? He's 22, covered in tattoos, messy hair that somehow always looks perfect, and this quiet confidence that makes you want to do questionable things. I've had a crush on him since day one. And maybe it's just wishful thinking, but I swear he's been flirting, like brushing my hand when we swap drinks, or giving me this crooked smile when he catches me bending over in my jeans. Last week, we ended up closing together. It was late, almost 11 p.m., lights dim, shop totally empty. I was scrubbing down the counter, and when I glanced at the espresso machine's reflection, I caught him totally checking me out. Like not even subtle. So I decided to play a little. I dropped the rag by accident and bent over slowly, just enough to give him a peek of the waistband of my thong. I heard him let out this low sound, half groan, half sigh, and when I turned around, I gave him a smirk. "Everything okay?" I asked, pretending I didn't know exactly what I was doing. He stepped in closer, put his hands on my hips, and looked me dead in the eyes. "You know you've been driving me crazy, right?" I felt my heart hammering in my chest. "Then maybe you should do something about it," I said. Next thing I knew, I was backed up against the counter, and he was kissing me like he meant it, like he'd been holding back for weeks. His hands were firm, sliding up under my shirt, roaming like he was memorizing the shape of me. I melted into him, letting go of everything except the way his lips felt on mine, and how his body pressed against me. He lifted me up onto the counter, and I wrapped my legs around him, pulling him closer. The heat between us was insane. Every touch, every breath was electric. We weren't saying a word, but everything we needed to say was in the way we moved. At one point, he dropped to his knees in front of me, and I gasped, gripping the edge of the counter like my life depended on it. I was dizzy from it all, his mouth, his hands, the fact that we were doing this in the middle of the coffee shop with nothing but glass between us and the sidewalk. When he stood up again, I looked at him and said, "You know that was kind of unfair." He raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah." I slid off the counter, and let's just say I returned the favor. From there, things got intense. He spun me around, and suddenly I was leaning over the counter, the cool surface against my skin and his breath hot on my neck. There was this moment, just a beat, where everything went quiet, and then it all exploded again. It was fast, wild, and honestly one of the hottest things I've ever experienced. At one point I might have moaned something embarrassing, and he just laughed, low and breathless. "You're gonna get us caught," he he whispered, which somehow made it even hotter. Eventually, we collapsed against each other, laughing like we were in on some secret. Which I guess we were. We didn't say much after that. Just cleaned up the shop, locked the door behind us, and walked out into the night like nothing had happened. But I saw the way he looked at me before we parted ways. And yeah, I've definitely been thinking about it ever since. Story 4. Met her at a bar. She was stunning, flirty, magnetic, and clearly feeling the chemistry. The way she bit her lip when she laughed, how she leaned in close to whisper things like, "You have no idea how much I need this." Yeah, I knew where the night was heading. We barely made it through her front door before her dress hit the floor. She pulled me toward the couch like she'd been waiting for this all week. She wasn't shy about what she wanted. One second she was on her knees, the next she was pulling me on top of her, guiding me in close with this breathy little gasp that sent electricity through my spine. It was hot, fast, needy, and completely unfiltered. There were hands everywhere, lips on skin, her nails digging into my back like she was trying to hold on for dear life. Just as things were reaching a whole new level, she wrapped her legs around me and leaned in, her voice barely a whisper in my ear. "Shh, don't wake my husband." For a split second, I froze. My heart skipped. My brain short-circuited. I pulled back just enough to look at her, wide-eyed. She just smiled, calm, composed, like this was all part of the plan, and kissed me slowly. "He's downstairs," she whispered. "He knows. Just don't stop." And I didn't. Something about the moment, the thrill, the danger, the surrealness of it all, pushed everything into overdrive. I moved with a kind of focus I didn't know I had, my hand over her mouth to muffle the sounds she couldn't hold back. She gripped me tighter, whispering my name like a secret she wasn't supposed to say out loud. Every time the couch creaked, I half expected footsteps on the stairs. But nothing came except us. Afterward, as we lay tangled and breathless, she turned to me and said, almost casually, "He'll ask about it later. He always does." I blinked. "Wait, what?" She just smiled, tracing a finger down my chest. "It's kind of our thing." So now I'm sitting here, asking myself, am I the bad guy? I mean, if she'd told me before I was already in too deep, maybe I wouldn't have gone over. But at that point, let's just say reason had left the building. Story 5. So, a buddy of mine told me Pilates classes were basically hidden gems when it came to meeting attractive, open-minded women. I laughed at first, figured he was exaggerating, but curiosity got the best of me. Next thing I know, I'm signed up for a class. Fast forward to day 1. I walk in and realize quickly that he might have been onto something. I was one of only a few guys in the room, and not to brag, but I'll go ahead and brag, probably the best-looking one there. Let's just say I wasn't exactly blending into the background. It's funny how much you can learn about people in a fitness class, the way they stretch, how they steal glances during certain poses, how they suddenly need help adjusting their form. And yeah, I may have worn light gray sweatpants that day. Purely coincidental, of course. During water breaks and after class, a few women struck up conversations. It started off casual. "Have you done Pilates before?" Or "You picked this up pretty fast." But pretty quickly we were swapping numbers and making plans to grab a smoothie. Red, not really about the smoothie. Since joining the class, I've gotten to know a few of the women better. Let's just say my calendar's been filling up with more than workout sessions. One's 21 and into hiking, another's 29 and works in marketing, and the third is 41 with a laugh that could make you forget your name. They're all amazing in their own ways. And yes, there may be a few more meetups scheduled in the coming weeks. Moral of the story? Don't sleep on Pilates. You might show up for the core work, but leave with a lot more flexibility. Story 6. My wife and I went camping last weekend, just the two of us, trying to unplug and reset. But things didn't exactly go according to plan. On Friday, she got absolutely roasted by the sun. Bad. By Saturday morning, she was curled up in the tent, red as a lobster, covered in aloe, and not moving unless absolutely necessary. She told me she just wanted to chill, read her book, and recover. Totally fair, but I didn't want to spend the whole day inside a hot tent, so I decided to go down to the river to cool off and get some fresh air. That's where I met them, a group of women in their 30s, all laughing, lounging, and clearly having the time of their lives. Turns out they were old college friends on their annual getaway. We started chatting about camping, the river, how my wife was out of commission thanks to the sunburn. They were friendly, funny, and had that easygoing energy that made me feel like I'd known them longer than 10 minutes. Before I headed back, one of them, let's call her Rachel, asked if I wanted to join them for dinner later. Burgers and beers, she promised, "and maybe a little fun if you're brave enough." I laughed it off, but the way she said it definitely stuck with me. By the time I got back to the tent, my wife was already asleep. She'd had a rough day, and I figured she could use the rest. So, I wandered over to the other campsite. They were thrilled I showed up. We grilled, drank, and swapped stories. The beers kept coming, the kind of night that feels like summer never ends. People slowly peeled off to their tents, until it was just me and Rachel by the fire, the embers glowing low, the air thick with the smell of smoke and pine. She gave me this look, half daring, half playful, and asked, "You want to keep the night going?" I didn't even have to ask what she meant. We slipped into her tent, both of us laughing like teenagers sneaking away at summer camp. She was still in her swimsuit, and as it came off, I realized I'd underestimated just how good she looked. Natural, confident, and completely at ease in her skin. Things escalated quickly. She pulled me close, whispered things that made my pulse race, and before long, we were tangled up in a way that didn't need much explanation. At one point, I hesitated, just for a second, and asked if we should be careful. She smiled, leaned in, and said, "Don't worry. I've got it covered." I'll admit, that reply didn't exactly settle my nerves, but it didn't stop me either. Afterward, we lay there for a while, catching our breath, the tent heavy with heat and quiet laughter. Eventually, I slipped out and made my way back to my tent. My wife was still fast asleep, wrapped up in her blanket, unaware of the night I'd just had. I lay down next to her and stared at the ceiling of the tent, wondering what exactly I'd just gotten myself into, and whether next year's camping trip might get even more interesting. Story 7. I've always had this fantasy of being touched in that hazy, in-between place. Half asleep, half aware, waking to someone already there, already on me, inside me, like my body had said yes before my brain even had the chance to weigh in. And then one night it happened. I don't know what time it was. Everything was still, the room dark, quiet. I was drifting in and out of sleep when I felt it, a slow, steady pressure between my thighs. At first, I thought it was part of a dream. My body responded instinctively, hips shifting, breath catching. There was a pulse between my legs that made me melt into the sheets. But then clarity. This wasn't a dream. I was on my stomach, face buried in the pillow, and he was behind me, moving with this careful rhythm, like he didn't want to wake me. Or maybe like he hoped I already was. There was something about the way he moved, slow, deep, deliberate, that made it impossible to stay still. I stayed quiet, eyes closed, heart racing. Letting him think I was asleep was almost as thrilling as the act itself. The way he eased into me, the way my body welcomed him, it was intoxicating. My breath hitched, a soft sound slipping out without my permission. That's when he knew. His hand slid around my waist, fingers brushing lower, and his voice was suddenly at my ear, low, rough, commanding, "Be good. Stay quiet." That did something to me. His fingers moved with maddening precision, teasing me, coaxing more soft sounds from my lips. And now that he knew I was awake, his pace shifted, less careful, more intent. Each movement was deeper, stronger, like he'd been holding back and finally let go. I bit my lip, trying not to make a sound, but everything in me was humming, straining toward him, unraveling with every stroke and every breath against my skin. It built, slow and overwhelming, until I couldn't hold it anymore. I clenched the sheets, trembling, falling apart beneath him. But he wasn't done. He kept going, chasing his own high, muscles tense, breath ragged. I felt the moment he gave in, his body pressed hard against mine, a low groan spilling against my shoulder. It was messy, breathless, absolutely perfect. And then stillness. He lingered for a second before kissing my shoulder, then gave me a lazy little smack on the hip. Half praise, half play, before rolling away, leaving me breathless, buzzing, and wide awake in the dark. I didn't say anything, just smiled into the pillow, because I really, really hope he does it again. Story 8. I'm 20 now, but this happened years ago, back when sleepovers were still a regular thing, and awkward moments had a way of etching themselves into your brain forever. It was at my best friend's house. We'd stayed up late playing video games, eating junk, the usual. His mom was around too, super sweet, always nice to us. But even back then, I couldn't help but notice her. She had this presence, curvy, confident, and completely unaware of how distracting she was. I tried not to stare, but let's be real, it wasn't easy. Anyway, sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up needing to use the bathroom. The house was dark and quiet, except for this faint sound coming from down the hall. I didn't think much of it, figured maybe someone had the TV on low or something. But when I opened the bathroom door, I froze. She was standing there, completely bare, like she hadn't expected anyone to be awake. The noise? Yeah, it was her. And she didn't even flinch when I walked in. No gasp, no scrambling to cover up. Just stillness. Her eyes locked on mine like she was waiting to see what I'd do. We stood there for what felt like forever, just staring. My heart was hammering in my chest, my brain scrambling to make sense of what I was looking at, what she was doing, and why she wasn't saying anything. Eventually, I just turned and walked out, not saying a word. I never brought it up to my friend, and she never did either. But every time I saw her after that, there was this weird tension, like we both remembered, but no one acknowledged it. The thing that sticks with me the most isn't even what I saw. It's how calm she was. Like she wasn't surprised. Like maybe she wanted me to see. I still think about that moment sometimes. Not because I fully understand it, but because I don't. Story 9. I've always been a fan of mixing my favorite things to create something even better. And lately, I've had this particular fantasy on my mind. Let's just call it a group experience with strangers. The idea of giving up control, diving into the unknown, and being the center of attention? Yeah, that hits different. Of course, pulling something like that off isn't exactly easy. But Max, my eternally supportive and slightly mischievous partner, was totally on board. He basically took the reins, found some people online who were into the same idea, and planned the whole thing so I wouldn't know a single face in the room. He even drove me there. Sweet, right? Though I'm pretty sure part of him just wanted a front row seat. When we arrived, one of the guys, super chill, was hosting. Everyone else was already there, casually chatting over drinks. Some of them knew each other, some didn't, but when I walked in, the room definitely paused. All eyes were on me, and I gave a little smile and wave, pretending to be cool, even though my heart was racing. Honestly, I always feel more confident when I'm not wearing much, so standing there fully dressed was surprisingly awkward. Max led me to a bedroom where I waited, perched on the edge of the bed like some kind of prize at the end of a game show. He stayed in the corner, partly to make sure everything went smoothly, and partly, let's be real, for the view. The first guy came in, broad-built and surprisingly gentle. He took his time, whispering that unwrapping was his favorite part. There's something about being slowly undressed by someone you've never met that sends your pulse sky-high. His hands were warm, his touch confident, and before long, I was flushed, breathless, and very glad I wore something easy to take off. Every movement was deliberate, every touch designed to tease. He kissed his way down my body like he had all night, and by the time he leaned in close, I was already lost in the moment. My mind barely had time to catch up before I was fully caught in the rhythm. After that, things got a little blurry. One person left, another entered. Some were quiet, others playful. Some took their time, others moved like they couldn't wait another second. Each one brought something new, something different. They had me shifting positions, gasping, laughing, and sometimes just laying there, completely overwhelmed in the best way. At one point, I remember glancing up and seeing a few of them waiting their turn, like a line at a very exclusive, very adult amusement park. I was the main attraction, and I was very busy. I lost track of how many times I came. Should have handed Max a clicker, honestly. My legs gave out more than once, but that didn't stop anyone. They were helpful like that, holding me up, keeping the energy going, making sure I was thoroughly entertained. Eventually, we all ended up in the same room. There was laughter, heat, and a whole lot of skin. It was intense, wild, completely unforgettable. And somehow, I outlasted them all, barely. It wasn't exactly Survivor, but I definitely walked away feeling like a winner. Story 10. We met for our third date, and the moment I saw her, I couldn't help but notice. Her top showed just a sliver of her stomach. A little glimpse of her belly button, toned and smooth. She's fit, slim, effortlessly striking. I caught myself thinking, wow, she really knows how to make casual look captivating. At first, I didn't even notice anything else. Maybe I was too focused on conversation, or maybe I was trying to be a gentleman and not let my eyes wander too obviously. But about an hour later, something caught my attention. We were walking down a staircase, her behind me, her voice trailing off into a laugh. I glanced back to check if she was okay on the steps, and there they were. Subtle but noticeable. Her top didn't hide much, and her body was saying more than she probably realized. I tried not to stare, but yeah, I noticed. I found myself wondering, was it the fabric? Was she not wearing a bra? Or was it just the way she moved that made everything look so alive? But then we kissed, and none of that mattered. Her face was so close, her smile so soft, her lips warm and slow. I forgot about everything else for a moment, just completely lost in her. Later that night, don't ask me how, but in one of the smoothest transitions I've ever pulled off, we ended up at my place. In my bed. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't forced. It just felt right. She took the lead, tugging at my shirt, smiling as she did. I helped her, and without a word, she slipped out of everything but her panties. That moment, her standing there confident, completely herself, was one of the most disarming things I've ever seen. And yes, I finally got a full look. Let's just say, she's full of surprises. I've seen beauty in all shapes and shades, but hers? Hers was something special. There was something about the contrast of her skin, the unique shape, the way everything about her felt artful and unfiltered. It was almost like discovering a secret you want to keep all to yourself, and also shout about from the rooftops. If things work out, and I really hope they do, I've already joked to myself that someone should cast a sculpture of her. Not for anyone else. Just something hidden, like a little secret piece of art that only I know the story behind. She's been clear from the start that she wants to move at her own pace. Told me she hasn't always felt in control in the past, and I completely respect that. The first time we made out, we stayed fully dressed. The second time, things got a little more relaxed, boxers, panties, and some lingering touches that felt like they were building towards something more. I'm letting her lead. She knows the door's open. And honestly, that slow build-up is its own kind of thrill. Of course, I'm curious. I wonder what the rest of her feels like, tastes like, sounds like. But I'm in no rush. I've always believed the best things in life are worth waiting for. And she's absolutely one of those things. After our last date, she admitted something that stuck with me. It was so late when I got home, she said, but I couldn't stop thinking about you. I wanted you. I almost gave in. But I'm trying to do this right. I smiled and told her, I'm all about delayed gratification. She paused, then grinned. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, I think she's right. And hey, if you're reading this, and this sounds a little familiar, maybe just nudge me and say hi. I've got some fun stories to explain. Story 11. I'm 19, living with my roommate in this tiny apartment near campus. It's cramped and slightly chaotic, but it works. We've hooked up before, nothing serious, just one of those situations where lines blur, and then you go back to pretending it never happened. Her dad stops by sometimes. For repairs, groceries, that kind of thing. He's in his early 40s, and, okay, I'll just say it, he's ridiculously attractive. Like, annoyingly hot for someone's dad. Tall, broad shoulders, that salt and pepper beard thing going on, and a voice so deep it makes my stomach flip. I've caught him looking at me once or twice, but I always brushed it off. I mean, come on, he's my roommate's dad. No way, right? Last night, she was out partying, and I was home in my usual lazy night outfit. Tiny shorts, loose tank top, no bra. Classic, I'm not expecting company look. So when there's a knock at the door and I open it to see him standing there with a toolbox, I nearly forget how to speak. I try to act normal, but I can tell he's looking. Not in a creepy way, just lingering. We end up in the kitchen, making small talk while he leans against the counter like he owns the place. The air between us? Heavy. Charged. Like we're both pretending this is just a casual conversation, but we can feel it building. At one point, he glances down at me and says, "You've really grown up, huh?" with this half smile that makes my breath catch. I laugh it off, but my heart is racing, and my brain is spinning in 1,000 directions. Then, I don't know what comes over me, I just blurt out, "Do you ever think about me?" Instant regret, until he looks me dead in the eye and says, "All the time." And that's when things tip. He steps closer, and everything slows down. I can feel the heat coming off him. He reaches for my waist, pulls me in, and kisses me hard. It's not sweet. It's not slow. It's pure tension finally snapping. His hands are strong, his beard brushes against my face, and I'm already dizzy from how badly I want this. I don't remember how we moved, but suddenly I'm up on the counter, legs around his waist, and the kitchen is way too quiet for how loud my thoughts are. There's touchin'. Whispered things I probably shouldn't repeat. Every little sound intensifies the moment, and I'm melting under his hands. Eventually we both come back to our senses, just enough to breathe, adjust our clothes, and pretend we didn't just cross a line we can't uncross. He leaves before my roommate gets home, toolbox in hand like it was just another errand. Except it wasn't. Not even close. The next morning, I wake up to a text from him. Let me know if there's anything else around the apartment that needs fixing. And now all I can think about is what happens next. I know it's risky. I know it's complicated. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't want more. Am I playing with fire? Probably. Do I care? Not really. Story 12. I've always been a little wild, open, honest, and fully comfortable in my own skin. Anyone who knows me knows that I lean into that side of myself, and I don't really hide it. So when my kid's birthday rolled around, we kept it simple. Just close family, a few snacks, and a pool to help the kids burn off energy before the sugar rush hit. We live in a condo with a shared pool, and it was a warm day, so naturally the pool was the perfect escape. My husband stayed upstairs with his sister, her husband, and a few of the older family members who didn't want to swim. I headed down with his brother and her husband to keep an eye on the kids playing in the shallow end. We hung out in the deeper part of the pool, me casually leaning against the wall, one guy on either side. It was innocent enough at first. A few laughs, a few splashes, and the occasional rogue beach ball floating our way that I'd swim out to retrieve. Nothing out of the ordinary, until one particular swim back. I accidentally brushed my hand against my sister-in-law's husband's shorts. It wasn't intentional, at first. I apologized, a little flustered, but he just stared at me with this amused expression. My husband's brother, who already knows me very well, teased. "What did you do?" "Heh," the other said. "She touched me. Down there." I raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Don't act like you didn't enjoy it." He laughed. I didn't say I didn't. The next time I swam back with the ball, I didn't leave it to chance. I was a little bolder, a little more curious. My hand lingered. The air between us shifted, quiet but loaded. He moved closer, just slightly, but enough that I could feel his attention. Eventually, the kids wore themselves out and shuffled upstairs with towels and cake on their minds. I told them we'd clean up and come up shortly. The elevator doors closed, and suddenly, it was just the three of us. We stayed in the pool a bit longer, playing around, splashing water, bumping into each other in that not quite accidental way. It was light-hearted, but the kind of light-hearted that makes your heart race. At one point, I swam up to my husband's brother and let my hand wander just a little too boldly. He responded in kind, and for a moment, we were lost in underwater touches and silent glances. Then I floated over to the other one, my sister-in-law's husband, my curiosity getting the better of me. I backed into him, slow and deliberate, letting him feel how close I was. His hands found their way to my waist. We didn't say much, but we didn't need to. The tension said it all. We played this game for a while, touch, tease, retreat. A little chase in the water. Glances that lingered too long. Hands that wandered just a bit too far. Eventually, we made our way to the sauna, still wrapped in towels, still pretending this was all casual. But the glances, the heat, the closeness, we all knew it wasn't just the steam making things feel that intense. What happened next? Well, let's just say the sauna wasn't the only thing that left me flushed. Later, back upstairs, I walked past my husband, and he caught my smile. He followed me into the bathroom and asked quietly, "Did you?" I nodded. He didn't say anything, just turned me around, kissed my neck, and made sure I knew he was still very much a part of this wild little world I live in. We rejoined the party after that. Everyone was laughing, eating cake, passing around juice boxes. No one had a clue what had just happened. The rest of the day went by without a hitch. But let's just say, I'll never look at the pool the same way again.